Expert on disinformation, Nana Jankowicz, has written, whether Democrat or Republican, young or old, urban or rural, women running for office were subjected to sex-based falsehoods and hate that male counterparts were not. In a 2020 study conducted by Jankowicz, she found over a 2-month period 336,000 instances of abuse or disinformation targeting 13 female candidates across 6 social platforms. And here's the amazing part. 78% of the abuse and disinformation on that platform was targeted against Harris. Incredible. So the issue that needs to be discussed, and we're going to do that today, is will the combination of misogyny and racism get in the way of this beautiful, talented black woman becoming the first president, black female president, or first female president of the United States? And I have with me here a man who has a great, great record as a leader in the Texas State Legislature. He was a member of what was known as the Dirty 30. And it's not a negative, but it's a positive. And this is the story he has written about taking on the power structure in the Texas State Legislature from the years of 1971 until 1977, where he and 30 others were able to break up the monopoly that ruled in the Texas State Legislature during those years. So, Mr. Lane Denton, let me turn to you, sir. White racism going to mess up this lady's chance to becoming president of the United States?
Well, we certainly hope not. But the issue, Fred, that we've got to look at is a very broad issue of where we are in the year 2024. The warning that I'm telling everybody that is going to not only be the most dynamic election, but probably the closest. And I've followed presidential campaigns actually since 1952. So I think I know the states. The Electoral College is not on the side of the people. And that could be Vice President Harris's problem. But I calculate they're not just 5 or 6 swing states, they're about 12 or 15. And if you have any hope for progress in this country, we're going to have to deal with it head on. But what's standing in the way is power, greed, and corruption. The military-industrial complex, just following the history of Vice President Harris, they're not going to accept her. And they want Donald Trump as the president because he will go to war anytime, anywhere, and we're going to have to face that reality. So what we've got to do is pay close attention to the issues and try to be as supportive and get as many people out to vote as we can. It's not going to be easy. For instance, change can occur. Today is an anniversary of the death of Michael Brown. The police department in Ferguson, Missouri, today is 50% black. And are you able to hear me, or is it okay? Another point I want to make, in that we're talking about white Americans. In 1948, James Baldwin told all of his friends, "I'm leaving the United States." And they called him Jimmy, and said, "Jimmy, where in the world will you go?" And Baldwin said, "It doesn't really matter. Anywhere I go in the world, they're going to treat me better than I'm being treated here."
Amen.
So what we've got to do, and I was in touch about I guess 3 or 4 months ago with the president of the black farmers. Now, this is an example of what we've all got to do to make a change. John Boyd, the president, met with Vice President Biden in 20, and we had to have South Carolina. The black farmers of South Carolina, Georgia, and Alabama, almost the vast majority of the 70,000 members. I think everybody understands the discrimination where a black farmer would go into the USDA office to apply for a loan, to get a special program. Oh, I'm sorry, the money's out. We don't have any anymore. And you'll have to come back next year when we get the appropriations. Well, it went on, and I must say, administration after administration did nothing. They finally got some funds and said, we got to go. President Biden had an opportunity to execute the funds. He didn't. But Mr. Boyd went to him and said, well, the show is over. And I'm going to, if you don't move and expedite the funds, I'm going to announce that I'm not voting for the Democratic Party. 3 weeks later, the funds started moving. And that's what we have to have. And I'm not an expert on how we're going to have to put the powers to be, but there is an entrenched white power structure, money structure in this country that prevails in every race. And that's the reason we're suffering from climate change and all the other possibilities that you can think of. And we've got to change that, and it can be done. Vice President Harris is going to have her hands full. It is not going to be easy, but particularly the first 2 years. But we'll cover later how we can organize to get some momentum and change. It's got to happen. Fred?
Okay. Doctor, you have a question for our guests.
You know, observation, okay, just an observation. Yes, I agree that the military contractual community is going to have issues with her if she becomes president because she may cut in on their money. But I also think, though, what could help her is the fact that Tim Walz is a 22, 23-year veteran, and so he may help her how to maneuver that avenue. What do you think?
Well, probably, unfortunately, he seems to be a pretty nice guy, but he does have a little bit of a veteran's problem that's come up, but I'm hoping they'll explain that. But when the voter goes into the booth, and I've conducted some of these surveys after the voting, the voters do not pay any attention to who the vice president. It's all about who the president.
So Trump was right about that. They don't care about the vice president. They only care about the presidential nominee.
That's correct.
Now, I do have another question. Project 2025. Now, how many of you guys in the audience have downloaded the document, just looked at it? Just raise your hand if you looked at it. So I have this theory that this excitement, this joy that we're seeing right now with Harris and Walz, these long lines of people, people in these auditoriums packed to the rafters, hangars having to be open just to hold all these people. I think the common thread has been or is the threat of more of that document being activated. Now, do you think that this misogyny and racism that Vice President Harris is encountering now and will encounter more as a president, do you think that that document will slow it down or will it increase even more?
Well, it's 800 pages long.
900.
900. It's
932, I think.
And don't you think they are saying, why in the world did we ever do that? I mean, I'm not sure what the impact, it's probably not going to be too major when it gets right down to it. The issues are really going to be too complicated in that particular document. I'm just not sure. I'd have to pass on that.
Well, let me ask you a question. Historically in this country, white voters have not put their best interest before consideration of something black. I mean, they'll vote for something against their best interest if it's against us. Now we have a perfect example. Project 2025, I think, is against almost everyone's best interest except the super rich. Now they have a choice. They got this black woman, and she is black, okay? Trump, she's black. Woman that can become president. Now they have their choice. They want to put this guy in there who's going to probably implement 2025, which is going to be against their best interest. Or are they going to vote for this black woman who will block 2025?
Well, it's always a possibility from a standpoint of the white voter, not really taking in consideration what's the right thing to do, Fred, but I'm guessing the crowd that I understand that wrote the Project 2025 are ultra conservatives, and I think by the time it gets into October, and I'll say this, for the first time in many presidential campaigns, the debates will be very important, but it may also add to the chaos that's occurring. And I didn't mention earlier, I've calculated that it's very likely to go to the House of Representatives. Neither candidate gets the 270, number one. Number two, there's a possibility of lawsuits being filed like crazy, and you have 20 or 30 lawsuits. The experts are saying, well, the only choice will be to consolidate them. So we may end up, after November, seeing the Supreme Court, 9 people making the decision. Now, all of that is going to add to the chaos of the election.
Well, if it goes to the House of Representatives, I believe Trump will win. Because I believe the rule is each state gets one vote. And he would have probably, Harris would have the heavy electoral vote states like New York, California, not here, not Texas, New York, California, and the other ones. But all the rest of the states could make the difference and could give it to Trump. But what I was really driving at is, you recall, Lane, 1980, how the blue-collar workers, white workers of this country, went from the Democratic Party over to the Republican Party because Reagan promised them he was going to do away with all this nonsense of civil rights and everything else. Because, you know, he made his first address in Philadelphia, Mississippi, which sent a message. And so could we see the same thing happening again? That not that folks who wrote that document, but the blue-collar worker out there that's white, will they want to support Ms. Harris?
Well, the UAW in Michigan, and Michigan is one of the key states, endorsed Vice President Harris.
That's the leadership. I'm not talking about that, Lane, and you know I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the workers who go 8 to 5 every day. They belong to the union, but we know in 1980 they bucked the union and went with Reagan.
And in 2016, they voted for Trump over
over
Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
Well, it's just the deep-seated racism that we have been unable to get past. It's out there, and we're going to have to deal with it.
Okay.
I don't know what to say other than we're just going to have to do the best we can.
Okay, Chris, you have a
I don't
question? Did you have a question?
You know, I take a whole different approach on all of this. I think this is going to be a different election than anyone has ever seen in our lives. You talk about, Fred, whether or not someone would accept a black female. If you look at Project 2025, I think that has scared the bejeebies out of everybody. And that being the case, Dr. Stribling put it very well in the last segment by saying we have to vote, because those things that we talk about or those things that are in Project 2025, should they become reality, is a detriment to America as a whole. So when you look at, you know, the thing that I asked Fred about is, when you look at America, will Americans today look at the blackness over looking at protecting America? And I think that that's what it comes down to.
Are you kidding? They'll do it in a minute. The white, blue-collar workers will do that in a minute. And history is on my side. Whenever there has been an issue that's important to us, they've never gone. You have one period, okay? That was maybe the 60s with the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. But look what they did right after that. They elected Nixon. They elected a Republican Nixon who announced this war on crime. What was he talking about? Going into the inner cities and putting those black folks back in their place.
I'm glad you're in between us, Lane, because we're about ready to get into a fight here.
Well,
Look.
most of the blue-collar workers have not and will not read Project 2025.
That's my point. They won't.
No.
They won't know anything
And
about it.
I don't think it's going to be an issue when it comes down to. The debate's going to be chaotic. Vice President Harris has got to prosecute former President Trump. It's going to talk about all of his civil cases and criminal cases. It's just going to be a shouting match that'll go on for maybe 2 hours.
90 minutes, they say. 90 minutes, yeah. Yeah.
And I haven't seen, at this point, I haven't seen really any issues other than Trump talking about the border and, of course, Harris responding to that. I haven't really seen any issues being talked about that affect the everyday American. So if that is not the case, or if you do agree with me that you have not seen issues being discussed, then it has to come down, in my opinion, to between America being free and a democratic society versus America being a dictatorship.
Why are you giving these people all that credit? I mean, I don't understand this, but I'm not going to try to dominate. Let's turn to Caleb. You want to add something in here, brother?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Okay, then we can stay at it then.
Yeah.
Stay at it.
Why are you giving these folks that much credit? Do you realize that for 200 and no, when did we first get here in 1602 or something like that? For all those years, they have not liked us.
I don't disagree with that.
They have. Do you realize people who go out and lynch folks don't like you? Why do you think these white folks today are much different than those white folks that were doing that 100 years ago?
See, I'm looking at a whole lot different. I think the threat of Project 25 is overwhelming right now. And so that they're seeing hope with Harris and Waltz on slowing it down, because they've been working on that document for about 40 years anyway. And Trump was just an ideal person to give it to, although he said he doesn't know anything about it, and he may not. But the point is that I think right now I have to admit, listening to the campaign rallies and the speeches, there is a sign of hope. There's a sign of joy there that, whew, let her get in so we don't have to deal with this book for at least 4 years, possibly 8. But it's that threat there because Christian nationalism is only a small percentage of people. I was a member of a church here in San Antonio that's a Christian nationalist church. And the things you hear from the pulpit is scary. And so that idea of being imposed on people, that's a scary thing. And the idea that each one of us in this room, there are certain freedoms that we like. And again, Project 2025 is designed to pull away all those freedoms, whether you're black, white, green, gay, whatever. It's designed to pull, now, because I have looked at that document pretty closely, and they've got stuff in there against vets, they got stuff in there against senior citizens, they have redefined what a family is, they talk about education, they talk about Head Start, they talk about getting rid of Medicare, they talk about, that document hits everybody's nerve points.
You got Fred squirming in the seat over there.
Fred, I'm not going to go ask, okay? But that document hits everybody's nerve points, everybody's golden cow is in that book.
Why do you think the people we're talking about don't give a damn about that? What they see is, what they see.
Who are you saying?
I'm talking about that white class of folks out there.
Which one? Are you talking about the ones at the Trump rally or at the...
I'm talking about the ones that go to work every day, work in factories, the farmers, all the farmers. I'm talking about all those folks. Everybody, let's say everybody outside the city limits of San Antonio. I mean, you want to go to Bandera? You want to go to Bernie? You want to go out to those folks? Those folks out there, I'm talking about, all they see is that black face thinking she's going to sit her black butt in the White House, and they don't give a damn about Project 25.
Well, this is how I'm looking at it. I think it's going to be a temporary field if she wins. Because again, for me, and especially me pulling Social Security right now, the idea that you've got some folks who have the gall of even threatening Social Security, that's my golden cow.
Why do they? You're assuming these people care
about
that.
No, but the point I'm saying, you've got some people who don't know, who won't read the book. So I'm going to throw all those people out there, possibly Trump folks. But you've got a lot of people on the other side of the fence and a whole lot of folks who are very, very familiar with their section of the book.
How many do you think actually have even opened that document? How many?
Okay, so everybody in the room again.
There's 350 million Americans.
So
how many do you think?
If we assess everybody in this room to include those of us on the panel, have you ever actually opened the book and raised a hand and look at it? I've looked at it. I've been deep in it. And it's ugly. But again, I'm a researcher, okay? So I can look at this thing a certain way, but if you are a vet, you go to the vet portion. If you are one-toe, you go to the one-toe section. But the point is that there are sections in that book designed for everybody in this room, everybody on 410, everybody on 35. Now, the percent of people who are aware of it is unknown. But I think it's been talked about a lot in the news or stuff, to where people are aware and freedoms are taken away. People. Hello.
What I'm saying is they don't care. What they see is this black woman trying to occupy the White House. That's what I'm saying. They don't give a damn about Project 2025. Some of these people would be willing to give up their freedoms to make sure she doesn't get there. And that's the crowd. And everybody in here is consciously aware. Okay, you got consciously aware people in here. I'm not talking about the people in here. Like I said, I'm talking about the people on the other side of 1604. And
I'm
you know
hoping
what-
that your views are not what America is today.
What?
Yeah, I'm hoping that your views are not what America is today.
Wow.
Because
Have you seen what's happened over the last 4 years?
you're not going to get those MAGA folks to vote for Kamala Harris, period. They're gone. There's no need to talk about or to them or anything. And the majority of what you have framed, in my opinion, you're only talking about those MAGA folks.
No, I'm not. That's what you're missing.
I know.
I'm talking about the average white person out there who goes to work every day. He watches his football. He loves his Super Bowl. He has his picnics. And he does not want to see that black woman in the White House. Now, what you're saying is that you think that's a smaller group, and it has decreased over the last 100 years.
Yes, I'm saying that MAGA group is a smaller group,
And it's
those
decreased
people.
over the last 100 years.
And when you look at Kamala Harris and the situation that has gone on now, the amount of people that she's been able to put in the room, the amount of people that are on these Zoom calls and so forth, the white women for Kamala, the white dudes for Kamala, all of these kind of people, different factions that have been for that. You've never seen that before.
You guys, that's a drop in the bucket to the total population that's going to vote. 50,000 is nothing, okay? 50,000 white men, 50,000 women, 50,000 black women, and we're in the middle of an exciting, everybody's excited. Biden stepped down. Here comes Kamala with all her energy. People are energized. You gotta wait until after Labor Day. You gotta wait until after Labor Day. And then you're gonna start to see what's really gonna happen. And even today, with all the excitement behind her, they're still even. They're still even in the polls. Now, she'll probably get a boost after the Democratic convention. But if what you're saying is true, she should have shot straight up in the polls. He's ahead in one poll, she's ahead in one, but the other, they're tied still. So that boost you're saying she's getting is because of the excitement right now. I don't think you can judge it on that. So anyway, anybody?
So you're saying that there is that threat that this country could be dealing with the nut for 4 years.
Huh?
The idea of being ruled by the nut does not appeal to me.
But you see, that's the thing. We all know he's a nut. But there's millions of people out there who don't think he's a nut. They don't think he's a nut. And watch, he's going to have a campaign thing tonight. It's going to be packed. It's going to be packed. And it will be. And to show you how much they disrespect us, they'll take their 6 little blacks and put them in the front row. So you see them all night long. And you know why he's doing that. Okay, go ahead, Lane. I'm sorry.
Not in the rally in Montana. I don't think they'll be able to find 6.
Okay, maybe. I hope not, but they might. They might.
Well, that's it. I mean, I want us also to talk about if Vice President Harris wins, and I'm predicting that she will. But she has the most difficult first 4 years, and if we don't figure out how to somehow
Lane, hold your mic up.
get close to visit with her and the power, and we're talking about the black community, and say, here's our agenda, here's our 2025. And if you don't do it, don't be surprised if we don't support you for a second term. And that's power, hardball politics, but that's the name of the game. And she does give me some indications that she's not going to be as strong as she should be, but who knows? Once they get in the Oval Office, they have no choice, right?
But Lane, you know that a first-term president and everything that's going to go on, there's certain things that especially the black community is going to ask for. We want reparations, we want this, and we want that. There's no way that a first-term president, whether white or black, can come out and be able to do that and get reelected. It's impossible.
Well, I doubt that, but you can do, for instance, what if you had a national housing program for mortgages at 2% or 3% for young people? Why don't we do those kinds of programs? Why don't we have free lunches in every school in America?
Is that not a Congress issue versus an administration issue? The administration can put it forward, but it's going to have to be passed by the Congress.
Well, that's true, and I would tell the president, you've got 2 years, you're going to have to start campaigning in every congressional district. FDR was expert at going into those districts and getting members of Congress defeated. You've got to do that and say, we'll give you a honeymoon for 2 years, but starting the last 2 years, we need some action.
Okay.
I think if you ask President Obama today, he would say that was a terrible mistake to let the Republicans defeat the Supreme Court, not even let him make the nomination. And he should have said, I'm the president, and I'm just going to veto the pay raise of every military until Mitch McConnell, you come around. A president has to, and if she doesn't learn the lesson, we're in for
Now wait a minute.
difficult.
You said if he had said something about the military, what did you just say?
All he had to do was tell the Republicans, I'm not going to authorize the pay to the military until you back off your Supreme Court.
How far you think that's going to get him?
I don't know.
Okay. We're
Oh,
gonna,
and he's the president of the United States. It'll get him pretty far.
okay, we're going to wrap up this part of the discussion and move on unless somebody wants to make some final comments on this particular subject.
Caliph, I haven't heard. You've got to speak up.
No, I mean, I just, I guess my only question was, I know when they had the White Women for Harris phone call, and what I've been reading is, I know there's been a sentiment where white women are expressing kind of like this remorse, saying that they're being blamed for Trump's first election. And so it's kind of this idea of, yo, we have to make up for this. And so they've kind of rallied around that kind of sentiment. So I just want your thoughts about that. Do you think that's going to be sustainable? Do you think that's going to be more broad-based than it appears right now, where white women are actually going to, instead of voting in their interest and the interest of their daughter, last time they voted in the interest of their fathers and sons. So this time, are they going to make up for that and vote in their own interest?
Well, I think what you're going to see is all the money and manpower going into Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, maybe Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada, and that's basically about it. So the rest of the country could just go to sleep because they're not really going to count. But one thing that we're all from Texas, my prediction is, and we're worried about the Electoral College, but if we can move Texas, and it's not going to happen too soon, but it's sooner, it's got to happen, we won't ever have another Republican president, and they will be the ones screaming, oh, we got to change the Electoral College. It's all over when Texas goes Democratic.
That's if, because we've seen a shift along the border counties where a lot of the Latino population has become a lot more conservative and have started to vote more Republican. So that shift may be a little bit further off than what we anticipate.
But there's no reason why the Democrats would allow the shift of the Hispanic vote. The Hispanics are in many cases discriminated not in the long term as black Americans, but they're really discriminated tremendously. Our education systems are horrible. We've got to turn that upside down. And if you're talking about the major issues of global warming, international foreign policy, the high school and college students ought to be leading the front. They've got the most at stake. But our government, there's another whole panel discussion on the horrible effects of the United States government. We have no money for a lot of these programs, but the truth is we do. I mean, we're the richest country in the world. We just print money like crazy. Yeah, absolutely. $35 trillion debt. It's almost $1 trillion in interest payment. Can you imagine what you could do with schools and health care? It just came out, Texas is at the bottom in health care in all the categories. We're right at the bottom. So we do have a lot of work to do, but I think most people are counting on the Black Video Network to inform the world, right?
Right. Absolutely. And so we're going to move on here. And Lane, you're welcome to stay up here with us, but we're getting ready to go to hot topics. Hot topics. And I'm going to turn it over to Chris to bring up our first hot topic.
Oh, I think we talked about Umar Johnson.
Yes.
We talked about Umar Johnson. Umar Johnson, there was a recent video where Umar Johnson was taking the words of Kamala Harris, and she was saying, I am not going to do something specifically for black folks. And he was saying, why did the Biden-Harris ticket do something for the gay coalition? Why did they do something for the Jewish coalition? Why did they do something? And he went down the list of talking.
He did. He went down the list.
Right.
He mentioned LGBTQ. He did something for them. He said Asians. He did something specifically for the Asians. And his point was he did nothing, and she will not commit to do anything specifically for black Americans. That was what he. I wish we could have shown that, but we
Correct.
couldn't.
So Stacey Abrams in Georgia, that's her name, right? Stacey
Yes.
Abrams. I saw her do an interview where it's one of those interviews to where you see it and you can't figure out where you saw it. But anyway, I saw it. And in that interview, she made an admission that I thought, well, I had to say, whoa, that to say as a black politician that they're going to do anything for blacks is suicidal to their career.
Right.
And she said something like that. I'm paraphrasing. So I think with Kamala, that is probably the same sense of reasoning that she's using as well. Even though she went to an HBCU, even though she, joined a black sorority, I think that our black politicians might have been told something that if they say this, then they won't get money. Now, I could be wrong, but that's the sense that I'm getting now based on what Stacey Abrams said.
What do you think, Lane?
Well, it's difficult really to say. She's got to talk about the issues that will help everybody. And because she's got to cut through, just think the interest rates and how that's impacting not just black voters, but across the board. The credit card interest rates. The Federal Reserve could change that tomorrow.
But let me interject this here. There's a large portion of the black community that always wants to expect, if we hire or vote for a black person, then the black person should do something for black folks. As it was with Barack Obama, the same is with Kamala Harris. You're trying to win votes from everybody. And I'm not so sure that we know, based on our last segment when we were talking about with Fred, if you say something, and like the lovely Dr. Sharon Michael Chadwell said, you cannot say this and expect to be elected. You can't say, I'm going to give reparations for black folks. Well, first of all, that's going to have the ears go up at all the MAGA folks and everybody else that does not want to do that. So the question becomes is, as black folks, do we expect from electing a black person in a office, do we expect them to do something specifically for blacks? And the
Umar
answer,
does.
Huh?
Umar Johnson does.
Well, I think I do too as well, but I'm more realistic to say that we all want to do something for our people, but we haven't got there yet to be able to make that statement.
In our last session, we were talking about that blue collar worker out there. Man, if she came out and said, I'm for reparations, they would forget about Project 2025 and everything. That would be the death of her campaign. So why would this guy come out and even make that an issue?
Because that's what he does.
So it's all about him.
Well, no. I mean, everybody has a role to play. And I think Umar Johnson is playing his role.
What do you mean? How? When he criticizes her for not specifically saying, I'm going to do this for black people, and the only thing I could think that she could say would be reparations. So what role does he have to play if he says something?
The only analogy that I can give is it's just like the Spurs when you talk about the rock and you talk about pounding the rock. Each time you pound the rock, you make it a little bit more vulnerable down the line, okay? He may be saying this, and he may be believing the same way that I am, but he's actually putting that out.
What are you believing?
I believe that, yes, I want him to do something for blacks, but I'm more realistic to say I know that can't be done at this particular point in time.
You want her to do something specifically just for blacks?
No, I'm saying that realistically cannot be done right now.
I'm not talking about realistically. You said that you would want to see her do something specifically for blacks. And I'm going to ask you, what is that specific thing that she can do only for blacks?
I don't know.
Well,
the only thing I can think of would be reparations.
Well, that's going to be very difficult.
That's going to be impossible.
Right.
Just do a study, which will be study 500, and then move on. But get your candidate elected to the office, and I think the blacks are not as organized among all the different organizations as they should be, but you could take the AFL-CIO and the environmental and the black organizations, meet with the president, and the president's going to have to be threatened. It's a one term, and it's probably in her best interest to be one term. I sent the message to Washington, to President Biden, look, this is it. One term, you need to retire.
And the other factor here that that elephant in the room that we're not talking about, this would be not only the first woman, first black, but first interracial married couple in the White House.
Oh, yeah.
And and that may, that's going to be something, whoa, wait a minute.
Well, I think overall, if, the voters, you have to realize they've got to stop and decide what's in their best interest, I think they will. It's going to be very close, which is unfortunate, but get your candidate elected. But if we don't do anything and we don't go to the White House and say to the new president, stop sending billions of dollars in military aid and direct payments to Israel and stop the invasion of Gaza, get that over with, then we should all just give up. Because what's the point? Why elect someone if they don't do something?
All right, I think we're going to now switch over. Go ahead. Caleb, you want to say something?
No, yeah, I just want you get the panel's thoughts. So the API community had the lowest turnout on their phone call for Harris, right? The Asia Pacific community. They had the lowest turnout and with the lowest amount of donations. And that's a very large, wealthy community. And so my question is, what do you guys think? Are they doing enough? Are they doing their part to get her elected? Are they being as vocal as they can? And I want to bring this up in the light of their lawsuit against some of the big universities.
Right.
And so where does their community stand on Harris, on her mixed race, on her mixed marriage, and are they going to turn out for black folks? Because we just seen them sue the universities to prevent black folks from gaining interest. So what are your thoughts on that community? Lane, I'll let you take it first.
That's a very loaded question. Well, let me answer it this way. I don't think there's any question that the black vote is going to come out huge, but we have to look at the key states. Georgia's probably looking like the #1 state that it could make the difference. And I'm going back to the fact that if Vice President Harris wins and she won't cooperate and go get a bunch of people elected to Congress and speak out, one term, most people would accept one term as president. That's nothing wrong with that. But there has to be, for instance, what happened in Missouri with the Congresswoman that just got defeated. What was her name?
I know you're talking about.
$8 million was spent to defeat her, even though her voting record was 100% of all of the issues that we're for. Mm-hmm. The person who defeated her is moderate conservative, but he's black. But we're going to have to defend and help candidates like Cori Bush.
Well, right, but just a little bit. So we know, and we could just call it out, the person you're talking about was defeated by Jewish money. So they poured a lot of money into that campaign, into the primary, to defeat her, to get that candidate defeated. So my question is, how much money is the API community going to contribute to get Harris elected? So before we skip to her election, let's talk about the amount of effort all of the communities are putting in to get her elected, and what are your thoughts on whether they're doing enough?
Well, this presidential election will probably hit $3 or $4 trillion. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine that? When it's all settled, it's rather outrageous, and money's taken over. Mm-hmm. It's kind of dominates the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Right. And if you're third party, you're difficult to even get on the ballot. So if we don't deal with the money issue, but that would be the first thing I would say in the top agenda. We've got to stop the billionaires from dominating the party, because they control it. They have access. You know.
You have a burning question.
You brought up an interesting point. Maybe the Asian community is going to be ticked off because she doesn't acknowledge, she acknowledges being black and not Indian or Asian. I don't know. Maybe they'll turn them off because she doesn't want to be a part. She doesn't recognize, as at least, and blacks have taken over. I mean, like, they own her. AKA, and all these sororities and everything. And let's face it, she is 50% Asian. She was raised by her mother.
Yeah, an
so,
Asian mom.
I don't know. That's interesting. It's going to
Well,
be
I mean,
interesting to watch. You
I
see,
think-
if they do kick in, I could see why they wouldn't.
Because
I
I know
could definitely
she's
see
always
that.
she's always acknowledged being of dual heritage. You know, as far as I know, she's been proud of both.
Oh, come on now. The last 3 weeks, it's been what?
Well,
Let's
that's because
now,
we've
come on.
dominated.
Come on. It's been what?
I mean,
It's
no,
been totally black.
But that's
okay?
that's because we've dominated.
I'm not talking about that. I'm saying we're talking about how are they going to respond. If I was in the Asian community, I'd be a little ticked off. I mean, it's definitely I would be.
Well, the Asian vote is only significant in California, New York.
Right, yeah.
So
But
it's
she
kinda like-
already has those states.
yeah, but the Asian money punches well above its weight.
Money,
Yeah,
it could be, and
Yeah.
they probably will.
that's a lot of. You're talking about a lot of high tech Silicon Valley money, so that money punches above its weight. So that was the question: is how you know, like I say, they had the lowest turnout and the lowest amount of money. So that's what prompted my question: is what your thoughts on whether they're doing their part on moving her forward?
Well,
But
you just start thinking about all the issues that are out there. You can put them down. It runs about 50, and it's, you know, some people for it, some people against it. It's a difficult situation, and you're seeing that now. Vice President Harris, it's very difficult to go in front of a 15, 20 press people, start throwing questions, and it'll be taken out of context or whatever. The debates will be the most watched debates, and I think the most significant in the history. But this election is going to come right down to the end 50-50. Trust me. And may not even be decided on election.
Okay, I think we have time to go into one more hot topic, and that, Caleb, was your hot topic about the banks.
it was about the banks. There's a prohibition on being able to
Right.
donate money to the Harris Walz campaign. And so I know we were discussing this. The question was, according to Citizens United, campaign donation is freedom of speech. Money constitutes freedom of speech and how you use it. So I was curious, maybe you could shed some light on it, Lane, because how is that possible that they can have that prohibition in the light of Citizens United?
Well, it is, and they create all these special PACs and funds that the Koch brothers have just announced that they're going to participate. They were kind of off the program, but they're going to participate, and they'll probably be putting in, I don't know, $500,000. I mean, it's crazy. More than that. Well, they don't have a lot of time, but just go back and think it's going to be chaotic. Citizens United was one of the horriblest cases in our lifetime, and it's had a tremendous negative impact in American politics. But we are where we are, and if you don't have a huge amount of money, you won't even be able to meet any of the candidates, much less be appointed to any boards or commissions or ambassadorships. It's money running the show.
Right. And so, Professor, what do you, as far as that ruling, does it seem like they should be able to have that ruling or make that, the banks should be able to make that determination?
I don't see how they can do that. They can't, how are you going to control, unless they're into your bank account, how do they, you're talking about the rule that says they don't want the employees.
Right, they're not letting their employees donate to the Harris campaign.
And is it specifically just the Harris campaign?
It's specifically the Harris campaign because it has to do with something to do with state regulations, because her walls is the governor, and so it has to do with campaign finance and state regulations. So it's not, there's no prohibition against Trump's campaign. It only affects donations to the Harris campaign.
I think that's going to be challenged, and it's probably going to be challenged real soon.
What business was that?
So it's
banks.
the big banks. So Citi and Chase and Wells and all the big ones.
I'm going to make a stab at this and say this is only relevant to people who try to raise money through the office. If they're working and they decide that they want to raise money for Harris, they can't do that. Of course, because of the banks, a lot of them are supporting the conservative ticket.
Right.
They wouldn't mention that. Okay, the same goes probably for each one, but I'm thinking they specifically said the Harris campaign, but it's mainly on the job. You can't, like a football pool, you can't everybody say,
Right.
you
No,
know,
no, that- and
dumping
that's-
money for Harris.
That's understandable, but they're talking about private donations.
They can't do it.
So that's what they're talking about.
They can't
Well,
do it.
every business, manufacturing, corporation, bank that is non-union, they all have a meeting before the election, and one of the CEOs or the head of whatever explains the election and talks about which candidate will be in the best interest of our manufacturing company. And they obviously swing the discussion against. So there's not much you can do about that.
See, I'm thinking about a certain university that I work for that's on that book. I'm not going to say which university. I have never seen them fundraise through their employee system to raise money for XYZ. Now, their keynote speakers at graduation is a mega wonderland, okay?
Yeah.
And I haven't been to those either. But I have never seen, in fact, of all the universities I've worked for,
Yeah.
I have never seen them go out and do fundraising on the, I'm gonna call it on-the-job fundraising.
No, I don't think the colleges and universities, community colleges, will be participating. I'm just thinking.
I'm talking, these are all private colleges.
No, I don't know. The private colleges, they have ways of getting the message out there. I'm talking about the little manufacturing that's got 800 employees, non-union. Believe me, they.
Okay, I'm here from our producer. We need to kind of wrap up. So, starting with Caleb, final comments for this great discussion we've had today?
I think that I know there's been a little bit of talk about the military and where they stand and where they're going to come down this election. And so I just if you can remember the comments by Mark Milley, the comments by Kelly, the comments by a lot of people in the national security apparatus and the higher ups, they called him a moron and an imbecile. So I think that we may be a lot of people may be misunderstanding what side the military is coming down on this thing. Also, there is a matter of Ukraine, and it's completely clear that if Trump wins, our support and our funding for Ukraine goes out the window. And so, if anybody has any thoughts that Putin is going to stop at Ukraine, they need to go back to school. So I think that the military is probably going to not come down on the side of Trump in this election. And there's also the issue of China, who's waiting and licking their chops for a Trump election to invade Taiwan. So I think, just to bring those two issues up, so I think that we are probably misunderstanding where the military comes out on this thing.
Okay, Sharon, closing comments.
From an education perspective, Project 2025 in terms of public education is a threat, especially in early childhood Head Start programs. A lot of our kids went to a Head Start program. So as you consider however you're going to vote, look at the document, see how it can impact you and your family, and make the best decision possible.
Okay, Chris, closing comments.
I believe that people will vote in this election based on their interest to America, the future of America. I do not believe that people are going to look at the black candidate versus the white candidate. If that's the way they look at this election, then America has lost. Not the individual who's going, but the America has lost. So that's the only thing that I would say. And the final thing would be everybody must vote in this election. And, you know, I know we're probably supposed to be nonpartisan up here, Keith, but vote Democrat.
Okay, Lane, final comments.
It's the wrap up. I think you're exactly right. America could lose, but this is primarily speaking in the black population, that they're going to have to step forward and say, we need to spend money in the United States on programs and projects that help everybody. And we've got to stop sending money overseas. We've got to get out all these endless wars. We don't need 800 military bases. And that could be another whole topic of the discussion. But sanctions are killing the United States. Do you realize that 60% of the poor countries in the world are under U.S. sanctions? And that is hurting poor people, starving, health care. We've got to change. So there's got to be a major change, and it's got to happen fairly soon.
Okay, well, I want to thank you all. I want to thank you, Lane, for being our special guest. And as usual, I think this was a dynamic discussion, and hopefully those who are listening got something out of it. And until next time, this is Contemporary Black Voices telling our story, our way.
All right.